Hey Libra, welcome to your timeless reading. I trust that you'll find this message when you need it. And as always, use your discernment when listening to tarot readings because you know your life and your situation better than anyone else. These are general readings, and I look more at energy and patterns rather than like specifically what will happen or what you should do. More like soul lessons, soul growth, that type of thing. And what else? Something else about my little spiel. Okay, well, I'm using the movie tarot, which was gifted to me by a friend from film school. And on the movie theme, I'm also pulling from this Movie Genius playing card deck, which is not an oracle or tarot deck, but I'm using it as such. Oh yeah, these messages are meant as like confirmation or guidance. And Libra, it's gonna be fine. I think we'll take these. Wow, it's so crazy. I mean, like, I am shuffling the deck, but it's just weird how, like, certain cards, like the Three of Swords, the King of Cups, the Knight of Cups, have come out for a lot of signs. And so I think sometimes I just feel like maybe there's comfort to be found in the fact that, like, we're not alone and that, like, whatever's going on is sort of part of a collective theme. Just, it creates some sense of order in the world. So did I get through all the cards? Let's do that. We got the Lovers, Brokeback Mountain. Justice, I think this is Clint Eastwood. The Martian, Matt Damon. Talked about the Three of Swords a little bit, or just mentioned that it was there. Three of Cups. King of Cups, Bill Murray in Lost in Translation. Knight of Cups, Wesley in The Princess Bride. The World, this is from The Fifth Element, which I haven't seen still. Eight of Swords. Strength. And the Queen of Wands, Katniss in The Hunger Games. Oh yeah, obviously Sigourney Weaver in Alien. And now I'll pull a little card. Richard Linklater. Okay. I mean, he's done some stuff. And also, I would technically consider this a Two of Cups, but I don't know if we want to read too heavily into that because this deck wasn't created with this in mind, with divination in mind, per se. But Richard Linklater, he made Boyhood, which is a movie that is clearly like more of an like I feel like a lot of like Richard Linklater's stuff is like kind of experimental in the sense of like Boyhood was filmed over like decades so that like the actor kid like was actually growing up in the process of making the film, so it was kind of like slightly cinema verite, or it was like something that hadn't been done before. And then we also had, I think he did Waking Life, which was kind of one of the first like rotoscope animation things, if I'm not mistaken. I doubt I'm mistaken. I know what I'm talking about. Right? Oh, he did all those Before Sunrise things. Oh, did he not? Oh yeah, he did do Waking Life. Okay. I mean, Waking Life is like a little bit of an existential kind of... So anyway, Libra, oh my god, I'm like kind of going on and on about experimenting though. And I think that like, I don't know that I would personally say that all these films are great films. They're not like something that like I am like, oh yeah, like Boyhood's my favorite movie, but, or Waking Life even. But I think that they kind of break the mold. They start a conversation and they kind of like are unique and stand out on their own just because they're willing to take some creative risks or to do something that like other people haven't tried. So that definitely feels like kind of a vibe. Libra is not really worrying about perfection or even worrying about getting something right, because I think that the idea is there is no right way to do what you're doing at this point because you're kind of making it up as you go. Um, so we'll play with that as a theme for your overall reading. And then we'll dive in. I tend to like to start with some of the heavier energies so that we can kind of lighten the load as we go on. So we got stuff like the Three of Swords and the Eight of Swords, which is heartbreak, and it's also being stuck. And then I'm also kind of drawn to the Magician, which is the Martian movie or whatever. And look, I haven't seen it, but my understanding is that it's basically like Castaway on Mars, and I have seen Castaway. And also with the Magician, I think part of the reason maybe why this deck chose this for this card is because he's like building a life for himself on this planet, right? Like he's a guy, he's planting a garden, he's taking care of himself. There's kind of like this primal survival element. Whereas, so what I'm trying to say is like with the Magician, I think sometimes we create out of necessity. And there was that whole idea of experimenting that we just talked about too. So I think like this is kind of the medicine of this energy, which is like, Libra, maybe you're feeling really stuck, and maybe you're feeling really paralyzed, and you're feeling maybe really stuck and paralyzed because of heartbreak, because of disappointment, because of how heavy things can get, which they certainly can and have been very heavy. An example of this energy would be like if you have only been in bad relationships, right? And like you've only had your heart broken. And then it can kind of manifest into like, what's wrong with me? Why do I attract these kinds of people? Like, why is this? So it's kind of like if you have like an anxious attachment style, and you play that out enough times, you can turn into an avoidant attachment style, which is like just kind of not putting yourself out there, not trying, because that has just become the comfort zone and safety to protect your broken heart. But we do have the Lovers coming up. Interesting, but we'll talk about that when we get there. So I feel like Act 1 for you, I'm kind of breaking up everyone's reading into acts. I feel like Act 1 for you, Libra, is, and this doesn't have to be romance, it could be like being really disappointed in work, it could be just being disappointed with like a sense of like, it just feels like a sense of your own ability to manifest more of what you want, to have forward momentum, to have generative energy, to have kind of like creativity and joy and all of that. The stuff we want in life, the good feelings. I mean, I think that's sort of what we hope to experience, right? Less this, more the other. And what I'm called also to say is that a lot about uncertainty and the unknown has been coming up and kind of just in my studies of things. And I'm reading a book called Agnostic by Leslie Hazelton, and I really love it. Recommend. And she was talking about how the word happy derives from similar words like happenstance or hapless, which is that like there's like kind of a certain amount of a lack of control that actually brings in a lot of the things that surprise us and delight us and like make life an adventure. And so over here it's like you might in a ironic way be controlling your life too much with this Ace of Swords energy, like staying stuck too much, kind of to protect yourself from just this pattern of like, I don't want to deal with the Three of Swords anymore. But with these two, I think like that saying try new things, and try new things out of necessity, maybe even. For example, I don't think a lot of people want to be on a dating app, but maybe this would be like, especially if you were like, had never been on a dating app, because like maybe you were, in a marriage and then the marriage fell apart, and now, back when you got married, dating apps didn't exist or they weren't as prevalent, and now. So that doesn't have to be what's happening for you, Libra. That's merely an example of this, which feels like it's like a combination of experimenting, trying new things just for the sake of it, kind of just to see what comes up, just to start a conversation, just to see what results. So, and then like the magician is like, I am creating these new opportunities. I am putting myself out there. I am taking risks. I am being creative about how I approach my problems. I'm being willing to break out of my old mold. And that's partly because I have no choice. And that's partly because I can create a new beginning for myself, and I just have to let myself have the opportunity to explore what that new beginning looks like and to kind of be, it's like being a pioneer, right? It's like very pioneerish energy, but I think it's being a pioneer in a regard of whatever it is that has kind of been your pattern that's holding you back. So that could be something that's been happening in love. That could be, I've been working for other people my whole life and I'm tired of it. And now I want to start my own business. Take it as you will, take it as it resonates. But basically act one is you kind of like realizing the pattern within you has gone on long enough. And like, you're going to have to risk putting yourself out there and getting out of stuck. And part of that is just sort of like not needing a plan, but just kind of seeing how it unfolds, particularly like Boyhood, right? I don't know that he had he might have had a general idea of how that movie was going to turn out, but I think it's like, it kind of developed over a decade, right? And then he doesn't know if he's going to get off Mars, but he's going day by day and building a life for himself there, as he moves towards his ultimate goal. So take that again, how it resonates. Let's move on. Speaking of you being a pioneer, I am now drawn to talk about Justice and maybe even the Lovers, because these are both kind of like cowboy energies. I feel like pioneer is definitely a vibe for you, Libra. But like in this deck, I'm like always, or not always, but like I've recently become very interested in especially like Libra is your sign. Justice is your card, Libra. It's the card of justice. You are the sign of the scales. But for me, it's like Clint Eastwood, and I find him to be a very unjust person. I think that he basically, to me, represents white male patriarchy and like was totally racist, white supremacist guy, if I'm not mistaken, which again, I don't think I am. So it's kind of weird to have like a guy who's totally unjust be representative of justice, just because the culture we live in decided that the status quo was justice. Like it says, justice works with the natural laws of karma. What goes around comes around, and we reap what we sow. There is a need to weigh and balance. Be wary of favoritism. And he brings violent retribution to balance the scales. And he says, I've killed just about everything that walks or crawled at one time or another, and I'm here to kill you, little Bill, for what you did to Ned. I mean, even, and I guess this is from Unforgiven, I even think, like, just like, not, like, don't take an eye for an eye. So this card is just so weird to me, this representation of justice. And I guess another message I've been getting lately is to really think for yourself and to really use your discernment and to have your own personal relationship to your values and your morals and your ethics and your beliefs and your spirituality, and like really let yourself be really rooted in your own sense of the world. Like an example I can give is I've been taking Judaism classes out of like a curiosity. Some of my ancestors were Jewish, and I love exploring different things, but there's like these mitzvahs, these things you're supposed to do to be a good person, and some of them are like, don't dress in the opposite gender. And like for me, I love drag, and I find drag to be very spiritual, and I like to do drag myself sometimes, and like that's a part of my soul and like a part of like my identity. So I cannot take on another like person's doctrine and like let myself, become someone I'm not, just to fit the paradigm of what it has been taught is a good person. So like I'm saying that with justice too, it's like we live in the society that says like people like Clint Eastwood are good guys and like killing is a good thing because it's revenge and it's justice. But like, I think since you're a Libra and justice is your sign, I think that you can just be a little bit willing to challenge the system. Like, I think Libra, you can be a revolutionary, you know, like your justice doesn't have to come in the form of like working within the government. Like, I guess it's just the message I'm getting is like part of the experimenting, part of being the pioneer is being willing to throw the rule book out, right? And even throwing the rule book out in terms of like how other people have defined justice. And it's like kind of because like you can trust yourself to know what justice is and looks like and feels like because it's in your nature, because you're a Libra. So, and I think it's like kind of like being wary of where someone is taking on the cloak of being a good person or of doing the right things when in fact they're doing what is in your heart, the wrong thing. This is kind of a weird message, but I just feel like as you move along on your path and you're kind of breaking out of a certain mold, I mean, we got strength. So this is kind of act 2, which is like you're a pioneer, Libra. You're breaking out of old patterns. You're starting new things. You're trying new things. But in the process, there seems to be like this really strong need, not only for you to experiment, but for you to define your own goals and values and like end games, and to evaluate your progress and your progression and your success based on what is true for you in your bones. I mean, so with Strength, it's Sigourney Weaver and Alien, and like that's a movie where like no one fucking listened to her. Sorry for cursing if that bothers you, but like that's how extreme it was, right? She's like, hey, there's an alien on board, like we got to do this. No one listens. They all died. The only people who lived were her and the cat, which, you know, maybe cats are people too, maybe not. The point is that like the strength is like that strength of your own convictions, and especially in conversation with that justice, right? Like when you're out in the pioneer, there kind of are no rules, and so other people might be trying to tell you what the rules are and defining it for you, but if it doesn't sit right with you, if you know it's not true, if you know like for me, like I know my divine higher power encourages me to do drag because that's how I was made, right? And it's like part of my spirit. And you know, so but then, you know, the Torah says don't do it. But like that's you know, it's kind of like don't worry about the rule book. Part of justice is throwing out that rule book, especially since you're kind of on a new path towards building something new for yourself, but also maybe a new modality of like being in the world. I mean, there's a lot of like queer imagery like coming up or just like in this conversation. So like I think I've been thinking about that, like the spirituality of being like queer or LGBTQIA, you know, or non-binary. And we have the Lovers, Brokeback Mountain, and not saying all Libras are, you know, identifying in a particular way. I think it's more to talk about like the spiritual journey of really owning and defining yourself and knowing that you were enough and knowing that you were good and kind of trusting that you were made as you are for a reason, and that like true justice isn't holding up the rule book of what other people told you is right. It's you kind of doing that exploratory work of understanding that and having that relationship with the divine, which I would say is love, which I would say is like connection, which I would say is like someone once said, what if God is just all the love you put into the world? And I really love that, and like that has stuck with me. I like the idea of like the conversation of God being a question rather than like a definitive answer. And then I think also thinking about God as like actions we do and about like love, that all feels very like the concept of God. So anyway, I'm kind of going off on like all these crazy tangents, Libra, But we have the Lovers, so this could be you meeting someone. I mean, we did start the reading with the example of like you trying dating apps, and maybe you like, and like I guess if we were to bring it back to this, this would be like you defining red flags for yourself. And like kind of knowing what you, because someone might say like, oh, if they are like shy at the beginning, that's a red flag. I'm just making that up. That's not really a common thing. But then maybe you'd be like, no, there's something here. I'm going to explore it. And I'm going to trust myself. So I just think it's just kind of like not letting other people's rules get in your own head. We did talk about that quite a lot, so I don't need to like talk about it too much. But I just bring that back to like the Lovers. Like I think in trusting yourself, in defining things for yourself, in kind of like letting yourself know yourself and be true to who you are, I think you are attracting with the Lovers. I just feel like this is you just attracting divine counterparts in regards to just you're magnetizing, creating space for what is in what is basically a vibrational match, too, is how I would maybe put that. Like, so that could be partners that you're meeting, but it could be friends you're meeting. It could be really great business opportunities. Like right now I'm interpreting the Lovers just as you in connecting to your true self, the external world reflecting back to you what your true self looks like, right? Because like with them, they were both gay and they like didn't know it, I guess, or they just really repressed it, and then they met each other and they couldn't deny it and they fell in love, and like that helped them become more true to them. So I just feel like the universe is going to meet you halfway, right? You're out on the pioneer of like moving past your old patterns and blocks and what's been holding you back, and maybe that means other people's perceptions or other people telling you what to do or what other people think are right for you, and all those voices just kind of like trying to define you for yourself, and then you're defining yourself for yourself and getting out of that and really questioning the system and really questioning what you've been taught, and really kind of like knowing like, well, true justice is within me because I am a Libra and it's in my nature and I have the strength to kind of like stand by my own convictions. It's leading you to this Lover's energy, which I think is just you having a little bit of wholeness, right? Like having parts of yourself restored to you. So let's kind of let's call that like the midpoint or something, and we'll move into like what comes after that. So we have the Three of Cups, we have the World, we have Katniss from the Hunger Games, Bill Murray in Lost in Translation, and Wesley in The Princess Bride. So I feel like you're kind of coming home to yourself a little bit, and like to me that's a little bit of actually this World energy, which is the end and beginning of a cycle. So you've kind of like maybe concluded a toxic pattern that's maybe even been with you your whole life, and again, to go with like the queer narrative, that could be like coming out of the closet. It's like, I'm not going back in, like I can't take the genie out of the bottle, like or in terms of like just the conversation of justice, like I can't pretend that like this other thing is right for me when I know it's not. So I'll read this. It represents a massive achievement, a well-deserved success. Forces come together because the time and conditions are right, and the ultimate point is reached. Time for travel, adventure, and exploration. She is perfection, the fifth. Lilu is perfection, the fifth element, that combines with the other four to form the divine light and save the earth from great evil. She says, me, fifth element, supreme being, me protect you. Okay, I don't know why she's a caveman, but keep connected to the world whilst nurturing spirituality and inner needs. You will thrive with the right mix. Yeah, I mean, I think this is just kind of maybe, to me, an echo of like, this is where you've been meant to come all along, is to develop more into your own individual self and to honor the way you were made as you are, as being divinely like connected and in alignment, as opposed to the rules of what divine connection means. It's you really having that relationship again. Like a lot of this feels like your relationship to something other than you on your own terms and knowing that that's right. Like knowing that you were made as you are just to be exactly as you are. Um there's a lot about, I think, bucking the system here too. So I mean, we have Katniss, and she's someone who like wasn't like very fond of the system she was in, and she was like, I don't even think she did anything like sneaky. She just outbeat the system by kind of like sheer willpower almost, or just kind of determination. And then Wesley, the Princess Bride, I mean, he was a farm boy, and then he like gets kidnapped and becomes a pirate basically. Like he kind of like, I think both of these energies from the movies are kind of like these people who kind of fell into a certain system but refused to be beaten down by the system and refused to kind of like comply, and kind of like knew that they had to bring it back to strength. Where is she? They knew that they had the strength to come back out on top. With Katniss, it was like she was just training her whole life for it, basically, right? Like she was a great archer, and she was very smart and savvy, and like just kind of like knew the system so well that she knew how to make it through and survive and win and thrive almost. I mean, thrive, you know, thriving in the Hunger Games is well, I use that term loosely. And then Wesley, he was like so smart and so clever and so charming and so personable that he was able to convince the Dread Pirate Roberts not to kill him, and then later to like train him and like become the Dread Pirate Roberts himself. And so like it's kind of like I feel like you're reading Libra is at the beginning you're like kind of in this like unhappy place. And then you're like kind of getting the mojo, the initiative, or sorry if the mojo is a canceled word. I'm learning. Okay, so anyway, you're a little stuck, but you're like breaking out of those patterns by innovating, by giving yourself a chance, by kind of out of necessity seeing what comes, with the magician seeing what you can create. You're kind of becoming a pioneer, and becoming a pioneer, you're kind of like questioning the rule book and throwing out things that don't work for you and defining justice and your identity for yourself. And in doing so, you're attracting the lover's energy. You're attracting things that are like confirming, like confirmation for you being yourself is a good thing. Like, we love you just as you are, Libra. And then this Queen of Wands, this feminine creative energy, and this Knight of Cups, this masculine kind of like romantic energy, I feel like is kind of a little bit of you really, I would say, like, it's like kind of like in becoming your truest self, you are able to make the differences that you want. Like, I think an example of this would be like, I mean, this is somewhat of a complicated example, but it's like maybe in the past we think like, oh, like people who have a lot of money are evil, so I shouldn't have a lot of money. And then maybe we're questioning that, like, why do I believe that? Is that healthy? Is that true? What is money? Why is my relationship with money so negative? Can I do things to get more money? Okay, I'm going to take a chance on myself. I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I'm going to let myself feel worthy and deserving of kind of being paid a little bit more money than I am used to. And then the lover's energy, maybe I'm getting it. And then now this would be like, okay, I have more money than I've ever had. This is the example. And I've had it because I worked for it, but also because I removed the limiting beliefs and I experimented and tried things differently than I've ever done them before. And so now I have kind of like more abundance. And this energy would be like realizing with that abundance, I can go and make changes that I want to make, right? So like I can give that money back in constructive ways that create the world that I want to be living in. So I feel like this is like, to me, energy of like in reclaiming your masculine romantic kind of like intuitive like charming personality, and like in kind of having that determination and that creativity to navigate the system and beat the system at its own game by knowing the system so well, it's like you can be the change that you seek in the world, right? So I feel like a lot of this is like actually in becoming more of your true self. It's like you're kind of in a better position to thwart a lot of that heartbreak that was kind of keeping you stuck in the first place. Whether that's in relationships or whether it is a money thing or whether it's just kind of like being heard and seen or being valued by people, being in the right communities. I don't know how this is playing out for you, Libra, but the general vibe is like I've been stuck limiting beliefs patterns. I'm breaking out of it by experimenting, trying new things, being a pioneer. I'm throwing out the rule book. I'm creating my own rules or like understanding myself on a more intimate level. In doing so, I am being reflected back to me that I am perfect as I am. And then when I'm kind of like regaining my power and my sense of self and like my core values and beliefs and like thrive, like then I thrive, and then I'm maybe still in the system, but I have so much more agency to move around the system or overcome the system or not be held back, right? Either by myself or by others or by like this larger force that isn't, I hope this is kind of made sense. Okay, then we have the Three of Cups, and then we have the King of Cups. So this is community to me, like celebration, being with other people. And so it feels like kind of like that's sort of where this ends up for you, Libra. And then we have the King of Cups, Bill Murray, Lost in Translation. And I think like just the image I got for this was like when he's in the elevator with like all the other Japanese people, and he really stands out because he's a tall white man or whatever. Very, but I like whatever. I think it's kind of like standing out in your environment and like, but being a part of your environment too. So it's kind of like being a unique leader. It's like kind of like you're becoming a unique leader is what I want to say. Like you're becoming a master of your own. With the King of Cups and the Three of Cups, I feel like basically it's like in honoring yourself and your truth, you are creating more energy to be able to give. I just feel like a lot of this energy too is like in the beginning you were maybe constricted and like held back, and like in this process of you reclaiming yourself, you're also reclaiming a lot of energy, and then you have that energy to give to others to like help them fill their cups, to share, to give. So kind of like going from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset is how I want to put it, by honoring your unique self and your gifts and like what is true for you, not what you've been indoctrinated into. And I mentioned the whole money example, so that I think would be a little bit of this too. Like you're standing out, but you're standing out in a magnanimous way where you're able to be kind of a source of creating community and like change and a lot of positivity. So I mean, also just thinking like we go here from the Three of Swords, where did it go? To the Three of Cups, right? Like that's kind of the journey. Or do we want to do it this way? Whatever. And I guess I would say it's like you're going from constricted thoughts and limiting beliefs to overflowing emotions and abundance and community. I would say you're going from like isolation to a place of connection. And they say that the opposite of like in addiction, like the opposite of addiction is connection or community. Like it's not like addiction is a lot about isolation too. So it feels like kind of like in opening your heart, particularly like in being on this journey, you end up like opening your heart a little bit. That's the Lover's energy. Again, whether that's like an actual partner or just the energy of feeling like safe to be yourself and share yourself and be yourself authentically and to be genuine and to like be received for that genuine self. It's like you reclaim all this power to kind of overcome the systems that have been like kind of squashing you for long enough. And I think that's it. So I saw 222 on my little timer. So I'm going to leave it at that. Libra, it was a beautiful reading. And if you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe. And I'm also offering personal readings. There are links below to my website, and I'd love to see you there for a one-on-one and connect personally. So until next time, bye.